campaigners want to know fundamentally what inputs make a difference to getting the output. So I want this company to change its forestry supply policy. What's going to make that happen? They want to know that. Yeah? We want to know what do volunteers need to do to make that happen. So it's our job to make those two pieces meet. For example, it's extremely common to measure how many people attended trainings. That's nice, but what does it have to do with whether or not the company, who's our main target, has changed their position? Well, we can actually connect those dots. We just need to do a little bit more thinking. We have a campaign strategy, we've got clear targets, and hopefully what you've also mapped is the constituency of those targets and their allies. That's the first step. Next question. Our volunteers, what's going to be their key influence in this campaign? So that might be, what influence will volunteers have directly on a campaign target, on an influencer audience, or on a potential ally? So if we can measure the inputs, such as training, and the actual direct actions of volunteers in this way, so for example, how many people did the volunteers sign up to the petition? How many people did they speak to in doing that? And what were the sort of objections that people who refused to sign the petition gave? That's incredibly valuable campaign information. And it gives volunteers a direct line to be able to understand how they've made a difference. But moving up the ladder of engagement, what are we looking for? We're looking to build self-sustaining communities of activists who are part of the Greenpeace movement. That means also measuring volunteer to volunteer work. So a very simple example, you can't have a local group without some leadership. So measuring and tracking the work that the local group leader does, how effective it is in terms of what volunteers then do, and what impact it's going to have on your campaign target ultimately, again, becomes incredibly valuable campaign information. And in fact, you can use it to create milestones along the campaign pathway. So one other thing I guess I'd really add to that is that what I notice about a lot of our tracking and our measurement mechanisms is that we measure what's easy. We measure what's obvious, number of people in the room. I want to suggest that the other step we need to take is we need to measure what's important. And that's not always easy, but there are lots of tips and tricks to doing that. And there are lots of ways to create quantitative data sources out of qualitative information. And for example, if you really need to call 1,000 people, you can't retain that kind of information in your head. You really need to have some data systems that are able to absorb that information, and you really need to have a bunch of really smart volunteers, volunteer coordinators and campaigners who are going to be prepared to put the time and effort into creating that analysis. But ultimately, it really bears fruit. Our volunteers are much more motivated, our leadership are much clearer about the contribution of offline work, and ultimately, I believe we're more successful. We're not only able to be a people-powered organization, but we're able to tell ourselves how we did that and analyze our tactics and strategies, taking that into account. So good luck.